Welcome back, pinheads. How have you been? How have you been? Tonight, we're talking about something really interesting, and we're going to get into it right here, right now. And that is Missing 411. I'll tell you a little bit about this, and then we're going to go ahead and discuss some of these cases. Every year, people go missing in wilderness areas. Most cases are tragic, but understandable weather, terrain, injury, exposure. But some disappearances don't follow those rules. People vanish in daylight, near family, on established trails. Sometimes they're never found. Sometimes they're found miles away in places that don't make sense. These cases are often grouped under the name Missing 411, a term popularized by former police officer David Politis. Tonight, we're not talking theories, we're talking documented cases, reoccurring patterns, and why these disappearances remain controversial, even decades later. Welcome to PsychoPinion. So, what Missing 411 actually is? Missing 411 refers to a collection of case studies, not an official database. Politis focused on national parks, remote wilderness areas, cases he believed were underreported or oddly documented. His work highlights patterns, not conclusions, and that distinction matters. Even critics generally agree some of these cases are genuinely strange, even if they disagree on why. All right. So we're going to first dive in here to the Dennis Martin case. And I'm not sure if either one of you guys have heard of this particular case or not, but I'll go ahead and kind of give you the skinny on it and we'll discuss some of it. One of the most cited cases is Dennis Martin, age 6. In 1969, Dennis vanished during a family hike in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You ever been there, Eliza?
I've hiked the whole entire thing.
Nice. So we're going to talk about that. He was playing hide and seek. His father watched him duck behind a bush, and seconds later, he was gone. A massive search followed. Park rangers, volunteers, bloodhounds, even Green Beret. Nothing was found. No clothing, no remains, no confirmed trail. One witness reported hearing a scream and claimed to see what they described as a bear man carrying something. The account is unverified, but it is still part of the official record. To this day, Dennis Martin has never been found. That's very sad. 6 years old, that's terrible. And
Indeed.
so I've heard about this case a few times, and this one is like everything that I've heard on this seems like literally what I just said. Like I just said, that they were playing hide and seek and this kid just vanished. But the thing that's interesting about this is like no trails from like the bloodhounds. I mean, you got everybody out there. What do you guys think about something like this? What comes to your mind when you think about this? First of all, Liza, what's it like out there? Like you hiked this whole thing. I mean, can you disappear like that if you wanted to?
Absolutely. Yeah, I will say, kind of before we kind of go into a lot of detail, there's been many instances where I've been out hiking in just different scenarios, like either if I'm by myself or even if when I'm a large group. And there's like a feeling, or like, I don't know if you would call it like a vibe about certain areas in woods, and you can't really put your finger on it and you don't know exactly what it is. But there's been areas of the trail where it's been more just like fear of being out in the middle of nowhere. There's certain areas, like I feel like there's certain pockets of places that just have a very odd atmosphere, and it's more like unnerving, and you can definitely feel this like very heavy energy. So, and to the point too, like where it's like a bear. I wonder if
A bear man.
okay, where if it's a bear man. Well, let's just say, for instance, it was a bear, because bears, bears walk on their two legs, so their two back legs. So I wonder if the bear scent, because bears smell really bad. So I wonder if the bear scent could be enough if it was a bear that dragged him off, and somebody was just like in their mind thought it was like a bear man. I
Do you
wonder if the
think that?
bear's scent could be
Sorry.
enough to kind of knock the hounds' noses off.
Now, this is great because now we have Steve, who is a dog expert. Steve, would you like to comment on that?
Well, what does a bear do in the woods that we know? Exactly. So if a bear was to eat one of these children, sadly, you would believe that there would be remains found, and more than likely by the dogs, whether they be shepherds or bloodhounds, and that's something that I've noticed through several of these cases, not this one specifically, but both those whom have disappeared and have not ever been found, or the rare cases where somebody has been found after dozens and dozens of attempts of going over the exact same terrain to find them, and to have had dogs kind of trail go cold in the middle of a kind of a trail or a trek or um, a search party to be hot on the trail and then just disappear in the middle of nowhere. I guess the only way is up at that point, which is kind of strange to think about. I don't know how a dog would lose the scent or the trail, and then for somebody to show up sometimes weeks later on that same trail that's been scoured over dozens of times, if not 100 times, by professionals, and that child is found or that adult is found in an area that they had already walked through. So it is very perplexing. And I mean, there's 101 different hypotheses that or hypothesizing things that we could come up with, but I don't know. I think that's what's so
Well,
crazy
let me
about it.
ask you a question on Liza's theory there. So if we got the scent of the child, the dog's got the scent of the child, and that is what the dog is honed in on. That is what the dog is looking for. And then a bear, say a smelly ass bear, like Liza said,
Mhm.
a smelly ass bear picks up this child and just jets away like Yogi. And is that going to hide the scent of the child, or would it mix with the scent of the child? Or, like, I guess, I don't know, would it overpower to the point where the scent of the child just plain old just doesn't exist anymore? I mean,
Find that hard to believe. All the cases that I've actually heard of dogs losing the scent have typically been in search parties, more times than not, police dogs. But every once in a while, you get the guy who's out in the mountainside who has a couple of coonhounds or something that is bloodhounds that have insane scent to where they can pick up a Band-Aid a couple miles away. It's insane how good their nose is. And so just like you or I, if I'm going to use a silly analogy, but if I'm eating something like a slice of pizza and somebody farts, I'm going to smell the pizza and I'm going to smell the fart, but it doesn't get rid of one or the other. You know what I mean? So
that's
yeah,
going to help your appetite right there.
it's going to help. It's going to help it or hinder it. But I don't think that would be enough to take that
Stop eating
scent
the
out
pizza.
altogether. I see where you're going with that, though, Liza. I mean, it could definitely throw them off. And rarely are they going to have one dog out there, too. They're going to have teams of people with sometimes dozens of dogs, and I just don't see that being the case.
I mean, I think it's a solid theory. I mean, I just wouldn't know exactly how that works. That's probably something that I would need to maybe dive a little bit more into.
Well, in Twilight, they did use Jacob to mask the smell of Renesmee.
Okay, so then it's been scientifically proven
Yeah, then
that this can happen, Steve.
it's got
So
to be true
we're
then.
yeah, I mean, if it happened in Twilight, then it's very obvious that if they can do that in Twilight, it's very obvious that this big ass smelly Yogi Bear can take away the scent of this child. So
Exactly.
I guess that's it. Liza figured it out. We're case solved. I'm going to go ahead and call David Politis and let him know that, Liza's figured this out through Twilight logic, and he can go ahead and cross this one off.
I think they might have lost their scent when they were trying to come up with that kid's name. We'll call her Renee's May. That's it.
Yeah, they had
Never
to
heard
come
of
up with
that
that on the
before.
spot. They had nothing. Well, before I continue on to the next kind of part here, because I wanted to talk a little bit more because I was intrigued by that. Not necessarily did it have something directly to do with the story, but it might. Tell me a little bit more about these areas you're talking about, like the feeling, kind of if they look differently, like what kind of feelings you'd get, like how large the areas were. Like I'm kind of interested in what you mean by these areas kind of having different vibes, and I get what you're saying, but I just kind of want to hear from you, like what. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, there's been several times, but the two that I distinctly remember, I was with my dad, and it was a little bit after Blood Mountain. I believe that's in Georgia. I think it's 30
Some of these
miles.
some of these places have great names. Great names. Blood Mountain.
Yeah, and there was actually mm, we had actually gotten to this. It was like a couple miles after, well, it was several miles after we got to we
Bloody Stump Trail.
well, we had gone over Blood Mountain, and so it was past Blood Mountain, but I think it was like that night after there was a specific instance where I kind of started feeling like kind of weird about it's just like a weird vibe. I can't really
So
explain
like
it.
so like paranoid, lightheaded, sick, like what
No, it was just
explain
kind
describe how you
of
felt.
it
Heavy?
was a little it was a little bit more kind of uneasy and a little bit more scary
Like
than
you were
just like
being
being out.
watched, or like
No, it was just kind of like a vibe that there was just like something, it was creepy. It was kind of like a creepy. not like the typical, like, "Oh, we're out in the woods, this is kinda like, it's scary." It was more of like a heaviness almost.
So was it like a different vibe because of the area that you were in? Like this wasn't just you psyching yourself out because you're in the middle of the woods or anything. It was like
Yeah,
the area felt differently. There was a certain ambiance to the area or a
yeah.
certain.
Well, it was when we started getting close to there's a shelter because on the AT, there's different shelters you can stay at, so we're starting to approach the shelter, and it was probably about a mile before we got there, and then we also stopped to talk to this couple, and the girl actually said it was kinda like a creepy vibe, like, she kinda, like, said it, like, I didn't really say anything, and then I was like, "Well, yeah, that is it is," like, I was like, "Well, that's kinda weird that she said that." And then we did start to camp, and I was, like, laying in my hammock, and I heard my dad talking to this kid, and the kid was, like, talking to my dad about how it felt weird, like it was a weird area, and then all throughout the night.
Was the kid really there, or was this like you're
Yeah, it was a bunch of
oh,
people camping
oh, okay? There's
there.
a
It
bunch
was
of
a bunch
people
of people.
camping. The way you said it,
Yeah,
I was
it was
just
a
like,
kid
there's
that
this.
we had met
Okay.
earlier, and I think I had, like, gone to bed early, and I just wanted to lay down, so I heard him, like, kinda talking to my dad, like,
I was
after.
gonna say if your father's like talking to some random
No,
kid in the woods, maybe dressed like a pilgrim or some shit, that
no,
probably would be a sign that there's something more
no.
to it. Maybe that's Bloody Mountain's named after that guy, or that kid
No,
rather.
I think it was a Native American battle there. That's why it's called Blood Mountain.
Steve, what do you think, man? You're more of a believer than I am. Do you think that some of these areas keep a essence from bad things that have happened, or do you think some places maybe? I mean, I don't want to say like portals or like dimensions. I don't want to use words like that, but do you feel like some areas have a different vibe that could be somewhat paranormal, perhaps?
I wouldn't discount it, but I know from my own personal experiences, and unfortunately, Liza, I would love to be able to go on some of the hikes that you've gone with your used to go on with your dad. In
Very
fact, that's
impressive.
yeah, it is really cool. I've not been on or into a lot of deep woods type of situations. Anytime I've camped has literally been a handful of miles from civilization, typically. Although, when I was out of the country here recently and up in the mountains of Colombia, actually, there was some interesting things that I kind of experienced there. And I think a lot of it when you're in the woods, certainly in an area that you're unfamiliar with, your senses becomes really, really heightened. First and foremost, there's so much oxygen in the air you can breathe. I mean, you feel like you could just run barefoot through the place and take off in flight sometimes. It's really
Wow.
really kind of cool, that feeling that you get. But you notice extreme silence. You notice a little rustling maybe a mile away in an area like, what is that? And you start to hone in and fixate towards it. And so certain senses kind of dull and others heighten. And usually it's hearing and the sense of smell, because if you're looking into the trees and you just see a crap load of trees for hours upon hours, there's not much to look at, but you're really honing in on your sense of smell and your sound and what you're hearing. And I've noticed that there have been times when I have found myself in the woods and just kind of had the epiphany that it is dead silent out here. Like, I don't hear a squirrel. I don't hear
Yeah.
birds. Jake, you and I, when we went camping at the Devil's Tramping Ground, we pointed out how just dead quiet was there. And
Yeah.
albeit really no supernatural or paranormal experiences like we had hoped we would find or experience. If anything, it was just uber peaceful and just calm.
Well, the silence, I mean, it was very peaceful, but I mean, it was also eerie in a way as well because not eerie necessarily bad. I didn't have any bad feelings in that area, but I guess probably just because we're surrounded constantly by even if it's like electric hum, it's
Hmm.
like being away from even the electric hum. It's like, wow, okay, this is what real silence feels like, which is
Yeah.
almost weird.
Well, I'll tell you something very weird that happened to me with silence. I was hiking up a mountain, and the first time I experienced this, it was incredible. But I was hiking up a mountain and I started hearing this thumping noise, and I was like, "What is that noise?" And I kept walking a little bit more, and I realized it was my heart beating.
It's like very Edgar Allan Poe esque.
I know, but I could actually hear my heart. It was incredible. But
Listen to your heart.
Cool,
another thing that
Eliza.
happened that night was owls were really loud, and the only other time I can remember that happening was when we went camping
That was
listen to the
great.
news.
That was great, Steve. We were
But
camping and there was like horny owls all around us. And we were camping and literally you heard like,
but
and
this
then they would like get together and you'd hear like a little rustling and be like
it
Were
was
it
these
cute.
was.
were these owls wearing like spandex with racing stripes coming up the side?
I mean, these owls, these were some horny owls, man. You could tell that that was a whole mating thing going on, and it was like right around us. I mean, like it was almost uncomfortable how much of a part we were of that owl mating ritual.
It was very
Yeah,
interesting.
I
But
will.
these owls that night were very different than those owls.
And not only that, owls, birds of any type, even squirrels, they're all kind of getting a lay of the land too. So if you're not supposed to be there, or you're a threat to them potentially, in the same way that a bear might be coming through or something like that, they're going to be talking to their friends, they're going to be communicating. And so it's all how we perceive that too, and how we allow ourselves to kind of go off the reservation a little bit. If it's super quiet and you hear that rustling, or you hear that thumping like you were thinking, you had no idea what it was until you realized it was your heartbeat. Your mind can play a ton of tricks on you. Um,
Yeah.
and I think probably one of the worst tricks it can play on you is that you become disoriented. You don't know where you're going, even though you had a clear path or an understanding of where you were supposed to be heading. If you get turned around and then all the things going on in your mind start to play tricks on you again. Did I just do a 360, or did I do a 180, or have I been walking 5 minutes this way or 15 minutes this way? And at that point in time, I think that's how a lot of, certainly, these kids get separated, um, and adults for that matter. I've noticed that in almost every occurrence, and certainly it makes sense, that a lot of these people don't end up going missing until there's been a separation. So if it's either a group or just a pair or a tandem, once they separate to either look for a higher ground to set up camp or maybe a water source or something, is when one of them goes missing.
Actually, there's some interesting questions that are raised. As we continue here, I was going to bring up some of those things that, I had some follow up questions and you were almost touching on that. So let's go ahead and I'm going to move on to this next section here, kind of about children and daylight disappearances. A notable number of missing 411 cases involve young children. They often disappear quickly, are lost within moments, are later found far from where they vanished. In one case, often referred to as the robot grandma story, a 3-year old went missing on a family farm and was later found in a thicket. The child describing being taken underground by a grandmother who appeared mechanical. Now, it's important to note on this that this is a child's testimony. No physical evidence corroborated the account. The story is notable because of its strangeness, not its not. I want to discuss this a little bit because there's some factors here that I think are interesting to discuss, which, first of all, I think that we don't give children enough credit. But at the same time, even while I say that I'm not giving children enough credit, I'm not giving them enough credit in my head because I have young children and I'm kind of like, God, what would they do if they were separated from us in the woods? And for some weird reason, I feel like children would be more resilient than I believe they would be. I feel like in my mind, I'm like, oh, they would just sit there and cry and not do crap until like, nature takes them, whatever. But I do think there's probably instinctual things that maybe kick in or maybe they are a little more intelligent than we give them credit for as far as things that they've picked up or learned from us or like I said maybe even just that instinct alone. But I do think it's interesting because some of the cases that I've heard and that I've been reading up on and maybe you guys have put up on a little bit too is like the conditions, as I said, that they survive even in conditions where they feel like adults might not. I'm kind of wondering, like, do either one of you have an opinion on sort of what you think might be happening in situations like that? Maybe what the children might be doing, or even like, what do you think this mechanical grandma is? I mean, obviously, kids have a wild imagination and everything, but I would think that if it was a bear, they'd be like, it was a furry grandma,
Right.
not a mechanical one. So the only thing I could think of is that maybe they hid underneath some kind of farming equipment. I don't know.
That is very strange, and I've never actually heard what you're alluding to from that standpoint. But when it comes to children of a specific age, although they can have a bit of a mind of their own, so to speak, I don't think they allow some of the things that might take over an adult's mind in that instance. Certainly, they realize that they're missing, or their parents are gone, or they've separated. But an adult that finds himself in that situation could potentially allow their mind to really wander to the point where it'd be detrimental to them finding their way back. where a child is just looking for, okay, I'm lost. I don't know what's going on. I don't know the true details of what they could be thinking, but I can conceptualize that they might take it a little different than an adult would as far as steps to try to either find their way back or search for shelter, find water if they become thirsty. But I think shelter's the big thing. A lot of times when kids do go missing, they're found in an old abandoned shed or some form, like you said, potentially a tractor or some sort of equipment that was left behind, and that might allude to what they were talking about or that particular child was talking.
Well, I mean, nobody makes a better you know, fort in the middle of the living room than a child out of almost, nothing or anything that's around them. So maybe the imagination and instinct kicks in. And like you said, I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen the movie or not, but it's The Edge with Anthony Hopkins. And in that movie, one of the biggest things that he says to the guys there. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the effects of like the doubt. The doubt is what's going to kill you out there, like doubting yourself, like the negativity, I guess, that kind of thing is when you decide that you can't do it, you're not going to be able to do it is pretty much what he was alluding to in that situation. And with those thoughts, I mean, I could see definitely adults being more wrapped around their own heads or their own beliefs, or maybe even just thinking that they can't do it more than a child would even think of, I guess.
Sure,
Well, there was that one case, it happened. I can't remember when it happened, but it was like 4 kids, and they got into a plane crash in the Amazon, and everybody died except for them, and I think it was like a 14-year-old girl. She was like the oldest, and they actually survived for like 2 or 3 weeks, I think, out in the Amazon.
Huh. Well, there you have it. I mean, children are a lot more resilient than I think we give them credit for. And maybe I don't know exactly how that happens, but obviously it does with some of these cases. And I'm also going to say this too, that I think that when it comes to children, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before, I think that if there were animals around that could provide anything for a child, whether it be comfort, nourishment, warmth, whatever, I think a child's going to be a lot more open and more friendly to that animal. And I think that the animal would probably be a lot more friendly and open to the child than adults would be, because we are taught to fear things. And what I was saying about you guys have seen this with children is, I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, but it's like children will run right up to like a goat or certain dogs or whatever, and they don't know what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Whereas adults are a lot more hesitant. We maybe have had a bad experience. We've maybe heard stories, but children are a lot more kind of accepting, I think, of nature. Than adults would be. So I think that that's probably also a factor that's really going to help in these scenarios.
Especially bears, because I know that the one thing that hikers know is not to run, and bears are not. I mean, I would not wanna go up to one, but I wonder if they would see, like, a human child and
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that are instinctual in our brains as well. And I think that especially, bears, they always say mama bear, that's a common expression. And I think that we have the ability, and even I think humans a lot of times have the ability to be able to look at something and kind of know if it has good intentions or if it's innocent or if it means harm.
mhm,
yeah.
So, I mean, I think that a mother bear, for example, that is very maternal might see a child and kind of sense that that child may be in need and have no intention of harming the bear.
right,
Yeah.
or capability of harming them. I mean, if bear sees me 6'5", 240 pounds versus a 3-foot kid that weighs 35,
Well, the first thing the bear's going to do is put on some glasses to take away that glare off the top of your head. But
that's
then
true.
after that,
That's another thing I actually wanted to mention too. Being out in the woods, deep in the woods, and things like that. When it comes to heightened senses, very little light pollution out there too. So you've got just this immense, just vast sky with stars, and on a day that's not cloudy, and the sky almost comes to you. Like it's very strange. It's almost like you can reach out and touch it. There's a little bit more of a kind of like an ethereal type of feeling to that. And I would imagine being by yourself, excuse me, or separated, that those feelings that you get by experiencing a beautiful moonlit sky without any light pollution or anything like that, and all the other heightened emotions that you have would help stir even deeper the sense of dread or the potential ability to be able to get out of that situation. So fortunately, I've never been in that predicament to begin with. But it is very strange. But I do want to get back to something really quickly that I think is so pertinent to all of these stories, and that
Let's hear it.
is how whether they be children or adults, how their scent or their track or their trail just dies off. I mean, they're just walking along and boom, they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to, start looking under rocks and saying, okay, was it Bigfoot? Was it Chupacabra? Whether you believe in that stuff or not, you would have to at least believe the fact that they're still on the ground and they're still able to be found.
Yeah.
So I guess the other option is that of which, like I said, is up. Is it potentially an alien abduction of some sort? Or and I know when you say something like that, you sound like a fruitcake, but I mean, who knows? What other explanations could there
So let
be
me,
for a
and
trail in the cold?
I'm not trying to cut you off there, Steve, but I think I've got some valuable information here that I'd like to share because it's something that I would add post or sorry, during edit, I guess, post show during the edit. But I'm gonna go ahead and add that now because I was just so curious. I looked it up, but it says a dog's scent trail can linger for hours, days, or even months, but its ability to follow it depends heavily on variables like weather, humidity, wind, rain, terrain, or the dog's training and how fresh the scent is, with success dropping significantly after 24 to 48 hours. Though master trackers can sometimes follow older, very faint trails for much longer, even weeks. So that's pretty interesting. I wouldn't even think that it would last that long. And also, I wonder what the factor would be it being the woods and stuff and it not being as polluted and everything. I almost wonder if that would help because
Yeah.
it's like all fresh out there. It's not polluted. I would think that that would be a more ideal than like a dog searching for something, say in like a city setting where you've got all the cars, the pollution, smoking and eateries and everything like that going on.
Well, that's something that Politis alluded to, was that often during these times where a child or a group of people have gone missing, there tends to be some sort of weather anomaly that happens right around that time or shortly after the fact. So whether it be high gusts of winds or severe rainstorm or whatever else that ends up impeding the search and quite possibly killing off that scent, like you stated, would do so for the dog scent.
Well, as we saw in one of your favorite movies, Nope, weather anomalies come with aliens. So,
That movie was so bad. Oh, wow.
Liza, do you have any experience with Yosemite Park?
No, I would love to, but no.
Okay, so none there. So in 1981, she heiress, age 14, vanished in Yosemite National Park. She left her group briefly to photograph a lake. She never returned. Only her lens cap was found. Despite extensive searches, no trace of Stacy has ever been discovered. Yosemite has been, sorry, folks. Yosemite has seen multiple disappearances over the years, leading some researchers to refer to it as a cluster. Park officials dispute the implication, but the concentration of unresolved cases remains part of the discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, this one here, this kind of part of it, it doesn't give us a whole lot more there. That this one to me sounds more like it might be like a predator scenario, maybe not necessarily natural predator, but possibly a criminal predator. So I think that that happens a lot.
Like
I
an
I feel
unnaturalized predator.
Liza, what do you think? I mean, you've heard the rumors on the trails and all that stuff. I mean, these seem like great places for predators. You're kind of out in the middle of nowhere these days. Where are you going to be away from cameras? But in the woods.
Also, if you do have somebody that knows the terrain like very, very well and they plan it and they think about it and they think ahead, I think that that could absolutely be something that could definitely happen. Is Yosemite the one with like the hot springs, like the hot, like boiling water rivers and stuff?
Steve.
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe yes. I think I've seen like those hot springs and the geysers and things like that when I've watched like YouTube for Yosemite stuff.
Yeah, I think that's because I think there was like, I think I've heard there was like I think that people have like fallen into those and like have like been boiled alive and stuff like that. So I wonder, like, what if she fell into like one of those hot springs and just like got boiled alive?
Okay, so it says no. Yosemite National Park doesn't have well-known developed hot springs inside its boundaries.
So what is the park that does? I can't remember which one it is. It's like
That would be Hot Springs National Park.
no, it's not Hot Springs. It's like
Yellowstone.
There you go.
okay, Yellowstone. Yeah.
Yellowstone.
They have, but they call them something else.
It starts with a Y. I'll give you that. I mean, you weren't too far off. I mean, it could be, and I think that that does happen. I've actually read and heard cases where that literally is what happened. People watch this happen. A lot of people don't realize the danger, or a lot of people feel like they're above danger in some cases, which we all know is really stupid. But that does happen. My thinking in some of these cases, honestly, though, it probably is just I mean, maybe a serial killer or some kind of criminal element that is I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
even like I hate to say it, but the sex trafficking or the sex trade or something like that. I mean, I'm sure that there are predators collecting people in areas like that because, like I said, I think that it's really easy to kind of. There's no cameras. I mean, you're not going to
Yeah.
come across cameras out there in the middle of nowhere. Whereas in the city, you're constantly being watched by somebody somewhere. And on top of that, like if you might be able to get somebody out of there before anybody even notices they're gone, and then they don't know where to look or what direction to even go in, which is going to cause a lot of confusion. So, I mean,
Right.
if you think about it, it's kind of almost like a hot spot for that kind of activity. I would think.
Yeah. I wonder if there's some way that you can like hide somebody's scent.
I don't know. You could spray a bunch of like deer piss or something like that. Don't they do that in the woods when they hunt and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
Or spray
those,
themselves with some shit when they hunt?
and obviously there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have all sat and had conversations like this with far greater intellect than we do as far as how the woods work and what the potential options are.
I have gotten a panel of experts together here today, Steve. So do not sell
We'll
yourself
put them
short,
on
buddy.
whenever you can, because I'd like to talk to them.
This is the brain trust, yo.
Like when we talk about finding a new species in the ocean, almost every year they find something new. And obviously the ocean is so vast, but I'm going to use it as kind of a analogy for the woods in this case. In some of these very, very uninhabited areas, that hundreds and if not thousands of acres and miles of terrain that somebody could go missing, you'd have a hard time setting up a certain roadblock or trafficking area to know where people are going to come. Ain't nobody coming to your site anytime soon. So it's not like they just sit out there and wait. Could it happen? Certainly, but I don't know if that's a viable answer. You would think and these aren't dozens of cases, these are thousands of cases where people have never shown up and or they have shown up, but without explanation. And so because of that, you would think that you would have a more solid footing of understanding why and what's going on than the sheer I don't have a clue mentality that most of these people who have researched this for decades and decades can't come up with any real reasons or understanding. So
And that's the other thing, Steve, is you sit here and knock us as, being, professionals or, being educated in these things here. But honestly, I think we're coming up with just as good of stuff as I'm reading that they're coming up with. So honestly,
well, I get it. I'm just kind of joking to a degree, but I'm not a lifer. I'm not a guy that's been out in the woods and lived, in Yosemite or for 40, 50 years and know the terrain and know, when it's going to rain based off of how my knees are feeling or, you know, uh,
it's when the leaves appear upside down, that's when it rains, man.
that's it.
Another kind of scary thought too is what about park rangers?
What about them?
Like what?
Like they're doing it.
See,
Yeah.
I was I
Were we looking for a park ranger that was
Like
pretty good.
what if what if like some park ranger, like some of these cases are like park rangers like
I mean,
did
I'm sure it could be. It's
nefarious
probably the
things.
same scenario as like teachers becoming pedophiles. I mean, if you think about it, whatever your urges are in life, you're going to try to get in a position where those urges are more readily available to you. I mean, if you were some kind of like sickos trying to, kidnap people, I mean, that would be a great job for you. You'd be out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody would really bother with you. People would probably forget you exist. You'd
And
be able
like
to
you
know the
said,
terrain.
yeah, exactly. Like Steve said, they would know all the intimate details of that area.
Plus, not only that, but like when they show up to like look for the disappearance, they're going to be able to throw them off the trail. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of advantages to that job. And I could see somebody, I mean, Ted Bundy probably should have been a park ranger. I mean, realistically. That would have been a great job for him. He would have had the inside trade, and I could see people coming onto that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know how people who, and again, I don't necessarily believe or disbelieve in Bigfoot, but the biggest claim is that why, if Bigfoot exists, why haven't we found any remains? Why haven't we found any bones?
Well, some
So
people say that he's an interdimensional being.
I get it. So that same thing kind of applies to, okay, well, if kids are going missing, if adults are going missing, why aren't they being found? They certainly existed, and there's proof of that. So how is that possible? You know, if you want to claim that Loch Ness doesn't monster doesn't exist and Bigfoot doesn't exist, that's fine. And if your logic is because there's no representation, no bones, there's nothing tangible to show that they do exist, and that's fine. But if a human goes out in the woods to the tune of thousands of these people and they're not found, no remains, no clothing, no this, no that, that's something else
Well, I think
Yeah.
entirely.
Yeah.
that has something to do with the next question I'm going to ask Eliza here. Now, the Appalachian Trail, which is what you hiked, what you have the most experience hiking, that is made to kind of go weaving through towns and stuff, right? So that there's like sort of areas to stop off, things like that. Not necessarily that it's designed to do that. I'm not saying that, but there are trails, I guess, that lead you to civilization if you need to, right? Like it's kind of designed to not be completely and utterly unsafe, or I'm not
Like you're
sure.
talking about, yeah, like you're talking about like kind of like cut off and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you're not like just walking in a random trail like in the forest,
Yeah.
and So how many days at a time, or what is the longest amount of days you have hiked without seeing any civilization?
I mean, there are several. Well, I know there's the 100 Mile Wilderness. I think that's in New Hampshire, Vermont. Well, you don't have anything for 100 miles.
And that's in one direction. That's on the trail.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the side. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here, Steve, is the vastness. Like that's what I'm trying to get Liza the vastness is like it's like the desert. People are like, how can somebody disappear in the desert? Like, but it's like, do you have any idea how big a desert is? Like, if you have no idea really where you're looking,
Yeah.
it's like impossible to see every square foot or even every square
I
yard
agree.
or mile
Well,
even.
there's a lot of people that kind of refer to the Continental Divide Trail. I've heard that like if you really want to like really get out there and really have like a hiking like absolutely nothing experience, like I've heard of people that like some of the trail
Absolutely
isn't
nothing like
even
nothing's like it, or it's absolutely nothing like it's not
like
an
there's
experience.
like it's you like the Appalachian Trail, it's a
It's a
very
touristy
well.
trail. It's a touristy
Yeah.
trail.
Yeah, you could say that,
I mean, I'm
and
not saying that everybody can do it, but I'm just saying it's like when people are like, "Hey, I want to really hike, but I don't want to like I want the least amount of chance of me just disappearing off the face of the earth and dying." That's a good option.
yeah, and I mean, there are parts of it that are very isolated, but the trail that's, like, pretty much like, if you really wanna go and not see people for days and just be, like, in complete isolation, I've heard that the Continental Divide Trail, like, there's parts of it that aren't even marked.
That
A
sounds
lot of
awesome.
people a lot of people do have to I think you do have, like, to have a compass and, like, a map, and
That's
it's a
definitely more
very hard.
experienced. You need to be a
Yes.
little more experienced.
Yeah, so, and to think about that, like, they're so like, the United States is so much bigger than we think it is. Or even, like, when me and my mom drove across the country, there was parts of Arizona, and it was, southern Utah, where we drove for hours and hours, and we never saw anything.
Just flat. Just there's just
It
space.
just
It's
yeah, and
just
it was
open.
yeah, it was very creepy. It was almost scary because there was times where we were like, "Are we gonna be able to get gas?"
And
Like
that's crazy to think about that and being lost out there. But then also when you think
yeah,
about the forest is just as vast,
yes.
but there's hiding places. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like
Well, that's something that
camouflage.
I wanted to bring up. The obvious too is that, you know, if you're lost out in the desert, they send a helicopter over and they're going to find you at some point. If you're,
Maybe
you know,
huge.
yeah, but they've got a better chance because of the visibility. But if you're out in the woods, especially in real dense forest, you're relying on line of sight on ground level. And even then, with all the trees, I mean, you can't. It's not like you stick your head out in Arizona and you can see 50 miles in every direction. You know, So I can understand how somebody could get up underneath a upended tree or something like that, trying to stay warm at night and potentially get sucked down in, or the tree, it rains hard and the thing tips back over or something. I mean, who the heck knows? But there's definitely so many more opportunities for somebody to get lost, and for you to quite literally walk past somebody 5 or 6 times
Yeah.
when they're right there. Because how many people, when they do those grid searches and stuff, and I've done a handful of them in rural areas, never in the woods and things, but you're pretty much moving forward. Everybody's in line of sight. You're just kind of moving forward, but the you're the moment that in your periphery you've passed what you're looking for, you're not turning around and coming back. Maybe they cross up and do it later on, but there's definitely an opportunity for you to walk right past somebody who's kind of hidden. And once you've done that, now you continue on for weeks searching, and you've already found them technically, but you just didn't know. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention, because when I was thinking about earlier, when I was thinking about some of these cases, there was a point on the AT when my dad had to get off of the trail. And I had to make the decision to either go with him home or continue hiking. And so I decided to continue hiking, but he did have an injury. So we had stayed in town a couple of days. And so when I got back on the trail, we had lost a group of people that we had been hiking with because they had hiked ahead. And so at that point, I decided to go on, and I was terrified that day. I was really scared because I did not want to camp by myself. Like, I was really, really scared about camping by myself, because it was the first time that I wouldn't have him. So I hiked and hiked and hiked and hiked, like, way faster than this was a little over 100 miles in. And I thought that I was never going to catch up to those people. And so as I was hiking, I thought that I was maybe going like 5, 6 miles. And that night, I saw where we were at, and the people told me where I was at, and I saw the shelter. And I had hiked 16 miles. And so if you think about
How
somebody
many
that
how
is,
many hours was that in? Like one day?
it was one day.
Wow. Okay.
I think I didn't get started too early because we dropped him off, so it was probably like 9 or 10 o'clock, and then it was just getting dark when I stopped. But
And that's sorry,
if
go
you
ahead.
think about somebody that is terrified and hungry and is disoriented and is not going on a trail, and they hike, let's say, 20 miles out of the way where you think they are, and
Yeah.
then they keep doing that day after day after day after day after day, that would and what if they're going in a direction where you didn't even think they were going? So it's
mhm.
like they could be 40, 50 miles out, and the human body is a lot, especially if it's somebody like a 14-year-old girl. Like, your body is very incredible and has a lot of endurance when you have that, when you have that adrenaline going. So I'm also wondering too if some of these cases are just people that are just way off the mark where they even think they are.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. And actually, that really ties into where I was going with this whole thing next. Is that, first of all, we're moving on from children to adults, but I would say I would think that children would have more just natural energy than adults do. Cause I mean, that's damn sure the case when I'm at the playground watching kids. I'm like, I don't have that kind of energy in me. But section 5 here, we're talking about adults who reappear but can't explain how. Not all cases end with permanent disappearance. In 1978, Stephen Kabacki vanished while skiing near Lake Michigan. His skis were found, his footprints ended abruptly at the shoreline. 15 months later, he was found alive in Massachusetts. Great state. I totally get it. Kobaki reported no memory of the missing time, waking up disoriented, believing only hours had passed. Doctors attributed this to dissociative amnesia, a rare but documented psychological condition. The mystery isn't that amnesia exists, it's how he traveled hundreds of miles without memory. So, first of all, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you that about how far you could travel, with determination in a day. So he obviously was traveling. Now, to Steve's point, where it's like there's no pollution whatsoever out there, I wonder if all that clean air that we're not used to, I wonder if all of that atmosphere, I wonder if almost sometimes that might trigger a response because obviously our breathing and our oxygen levels have a lot to do with how our brain works. So I almost wonder if there's a possibility that being in a cleaner environment with actual real clean oxygen could affect somebody, especially if we're talking different altitudes.
Altitude's a big thing. Just last year when I was in Bogota, I believe, in Colombia, it's the peak of the Andes. I mean, mountains. I mean, it's very, very high up, and it is difficult to breathe, man. I mean, I'm in pretty decent shape, and just sitting around at the airport, I'm just like, I'm struggling to breathe. It was very odd. Now, I know I talked to my dad about it. He's like, yeah, I mean, people who live here, they get used to it, just like anything. Next to a sawmill or wood mill or something, you get used to that stink and that smell. But
Kind of like you
yeah,
walk into somebody's house that has like a lot of cats, and you can really smell that cat smell, that urine smell, but they act like it's nothing. I mean, I've been in some houses where you can almost you know, like your throat hurts when
right.
you walk in there, and
The
they're just kind
ammonia
of like,
is
huh?
bad.
Like huh? It's
Yeah,
fine. What are you
people
talking
get
about?
used to it for sure. But I mean, and Liza's point before, with I'm sure there are a logical explanation for several of these. Maybe more, none more than the fact that how many people go out into the woods ill prepared. They think that they want to be a weekend warrior, they want to do something or go on a hike, or they watch Bear Grylls or Survivor Man or something like, I'm going to go on a 2 week hike and I'm going to go do this. And I've got a knife and I've got a compass, and they screw themselves because they don't have the resources or the understanding of what they're doing to survive.
So we're talking about clean oxygen. We're talking about possibly elevated circumstances. We're talking about, and we're also talking about people maybe ending up in a fight or flight scenario, or switching into survival mode. And all of those things could be the perfect storm for somebody's brain for them to get into this disassociative state. I mean, perhaps. I
Well,
haven't been there, but
a
it
lot
does
of
seem
those
like there's
long
factors.
yeah, a lot of those long distance hikers, I mean, they can hike like 50, 60 miles a day.
Do people get weird out there?
What do you mean weird?
I don't know. Do people get weird out there? I mean, if I feel like I feel like I'd get a little weird if I wasn't around people for a little while. I felt like I had freedom. I wasn't being watched. Like I had all this clean air.
And if that was your
Doing
full-time
my
job
thing.
to hike up and down the trail all year round, then probably you would get weird. But I think a lot of these people are just taking a 2 or 3 week vacation and going and doing something that they want to do.
I think you underestimate how little it takes for me to get weird, Steve.
I know how weird you are. The
So I mean, I
one
feel
other
like
thing,
I feel like day two, I'm going to be swinging from trees with like a loincloth, like Tarzan. I mean, I feel like I'd get weird. I'd be like, man, I'm going to go for it.
Liza, I
Well, there
want to
is
ask.
this
Go ahead. You go. Then I get a question for you based off of something that you talked about earlier.
Well, there is this, like, weird thing that does happen to you, and it happened to me before. Because a lot of the people say that people that section hike it, the people that do, like, 2 or 3 weeks, they said that that's worse because, they say always test 2 weeks because then that's when you get used to it, and I think it's something happens in your brain where you do, like, get into survival mode because after those 2 weeks, I did not that I was strange, but I
You're
was
strange.
used to being out in the woods and I was more comfortable with it, I guess. So,
Yeah. And I think that's probably the same thing. And Steve told me one time about a big fasting experience that he had where it's like, you really kind of suffer, but then eventually your body gets used to it,
Hmm.
just like your
Yeah.
mind gets used to it. But I still want to stick with my point that I feel like we're adding up. As we go here and we discuss, I feel like we're adding up a lot of factors that could be a perfect storm for somebody, like I had said previously, that might cause somebody to end up in this dissociative state. Now you've got somebody that really isn't thinking. They're being pure, almost pure body at that point in time, fight or flight. Their brain is working
adrenaline.
differently, and the adrenaline, and they're basically marching all these miles through the wilderness in a direction that nobody understands. And next thing you know, you're in Massachusetts. I mean, I don't know. Is it possible? I mean, it sounds like it could be possible. Maybe not as fast as some of this stuff happens. But then again, I mean, how do we know, or how can we gauge what somebody's body is really capable of? Something?
Or
I
you
don't
can
think you
also
can.
yellow blaze.
Yeah, you're gonna have to say what that is, because when you say something like that and our viewers don't blaze, which I know a lot of our viewers do blaze,
You
looking at
hitchhike
you and you
because
know
the
who you
yellow
are.
blaze is on the road. They call that yellow blazing.
Oh, what, they like hitchhike?
Yeah, because so the blazes on the trail, like the white blazes on the trail that mark the trail.
Uh huh. So you're a white blazer. If you do that, you're a white blazer.
Yeah, you could say that. But then, like, if you, or they call it blue blazing, if
What's a
you
blue
take
blazer?
if you take the water, like if you do a river or something,
I'd like
but
that. I think I'd be a good blue blazer, Steve.
or if you are a yellow blazer, you're doing hitchhiking.
I do enjoy a good sport coat.
I would do the blue blazing. I like the idea of the blue blazing.
You look good in a blue blazer. Eliza, when you said that you went a majority of the day and went 12 miles, what type of terrain was that? If you can remember, was it pretty
It was
much straight?
16.
So you,
16 what?
16,
oh yeah, 16 miles. What did I say?
I thought you were
12.
saying the
12.
terrain was 16. I was
No,
like, what
I
does
got
that
you.
mean?
No, I thought she said that she was blue blazing at 16 or whatever blazing she was doing.
The terrain was, I remember at one point, there was a part of the trail that I actually had to physically take my pack off and climb down and get my pack.
No shit.
Okay, because the reason why I ask is there was I can't remember the exact case, but I know it was in Oregon, and it was a young child who had gotten separated, and he was found um, 12 miles away over two different mountain ranges. So it wasn't like hiking a specific path. He went over two different mountain ranges and was found face down. And I think it was, I want to say it was 12 miles, but I forget. But I do know that during the shooting and the whole beginning of the missing 411 stuff, that Les Stroud, that Canadian survivor man guy, was involved in that, the production of that. And he wanted to attempt to traverse that same area that this child had covered in the short time period that he did. And after 2 hours in, I guess he did this all in 9 hours. So this kid was found 9 hours later in two different mountain ranges over. And
Shit. That's
yeah,
aliens.
and so Les Stroud started and went 2 hours doing it, and he stopped. He's like, guys, I'm gonna die out here, or somebody's gonna get severely injured. The terrain was impossible to traverse and get through. Super dense, very rocky, elevation changes, virtually no visibility other to, I mean, just point in a direction and hope that you're still walking that way.
Wow.
There was no way to really determine, get this path forward. And he's like, there's no possible way this child could have done this, which once again is his opinion. But I would certainly believe somebody like him over, somebody who doesn't spend their life out in the woods. But that was pretty wild.
That's aliens.
It's possible.
Yeah, because
that's aliens.
even though the AT can be hard, it's still a very visibly marked trail.
So kind of to sort of get to a point, and I'm gonna sort of move ahead and kind of hit some points here real quickly because I try not to make these too long, and we've hit about the hour point now. Most of the things that we're looking at here are distance traveled, terrain difficulty, exposure, timelines, higher elevations, inaccessible areas, and not having appropriate gear. Some of the strange details that keep appearing is proximity to water, tracking dogs failing or refusing to follow scent, clothing removed or worn incorrectly, sudden weather changes, victims found disoriented or amnesic. Individually, none of these are supernatural. Now, it is important to say that while I'm sitting here saying aliens and all of that stuff, David Politis himself, he makes zero official claim, nor actually even really suggests that any of these cases have anything to do with Bigfoot, aliens, portals, or underground bases. So I think that some of this to me is sort of explained. I think that some of these cases you could kind of look at with some of the things we've talked about and be like, well, that's possible. Maybe it is what happened, maybe it isn't, but there's a possibility. I mean, the clothing removed or worn incorrectly, we saw that with like the Dyatlov Pass. And I think that that has to do when people aren't in the right faculties. And we did already say that, there's a possibility that people could be in this disassociative state based on some of the, environmental factors possibly. And I mean, we all have different minds. Some people have much more stronger faculties than other people do. I mean, I know some people that could, they'll bend and snap like a toothpick without a whole lot happening to them. And I know some people that are just very mentally strong and have the fortitude to move through a very difficult life and stay completely logical and reasonable. I mean, we also have to take into consideration that everybody's different in that way. Now, with that all being said, I think that I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's some of the cases that I've heard and that I've read, and I can't get into all of them today, and maybe we'll do a part two on this because there is a lot to unpack with this whole missing 411 case study here. Is that the one that Steve said, and I've heard of the one that I think he's talking about. And I remember that case, and I think that I want to say that they actually specifically said, if I remember correctly, that the kid was found on on like a ledge, if you will, that was very, very, very insanely difficult to get up to, even for capable trained adults. Cases like that, I'm not so sure about. But some of the other cases where people were found, 20 days later and they were 100 miles away. I mean, sounds to me like, if somebody was just hauling ass in a disassociative state, I mean, Liza kind of put that to the test right there, that that's completely possible. Now, as far as the
Mhm.
nourishment goes, when somebody's in that state of mind, that part would be most questionable to me. But at the same time, I mean, I think it is possible to move long distances if that is your main goal. And especially if you're not really thinking about pain or anything else, I think there's going to be a certain amount of endurance that's going to come with that in the right mind state. With that being said, before I go ahead and add our final thoughts here, what do you guys have any thoughts of your own or anything that you wanted to add or sort of bring up about this missing 411 deal we're talking about here?
Sure. I guess one of the more compelling things are the ones that have been found after they've been gone for a certain period of time. And so often they're found in an area that has been searched dozens of times. So that seems strange to me, unless you want to think about the fact that, like Liza said, they went 50 miles away and went off the beaten path. If you go 25 miles away and 25 miles back to where you came, or are going in circles like people claim, I guess that would be a possible reason for why somebody would end up back to where they were originally, and just kind of skirted around the search party, if you will, and maybe picked up around the back end of it once or twice, maybe, yes. But there's been several instances where they have been found, sometimes dead, sometimes alive, in an area that was clearly searched and on multiple occasions, and nobody had found anybody there. So that's kind of wild to me.
Well, one such occasion of that was Nora Kurin, age 15, disappeared from a resort near Malaysia rainforest. She had developmental delays. Her body was found 10 days later in an area that had already been searched. They ruled that an accident, but when it says already has been searched, Steve, you're talking about the search patterns earlier. Now, if it's 10 days later, is it possible that they've really spread out or that they're not in a particular area anymore, or that they've maybe called it off at the end of the day a few times? I mean, isn't it possible if those are the circumstances that somebody could easily kind of circle back around and nobody would really notice?
I would expect yes. I mean, and not only that, is it a search party of 5 people and 1 dog, or 50 people and 5 dogs, or 500 people and 50 dogs?
I mean, that's a
So
very good point.
are you looking for John Rambo up in the woods? So I don't know.
I hope not.
That's definitely going to play a big role if the search party is a larger search party or a smaller one, and how much terrain you have to go through, and when was the last time somebody was seen versus how much time has passed. So they were seen here, it's been 18 hours. Even if the person ran 15 miles an hour straight, they could only get X amount of miles away. So, they've got a certain understanding of how far they can go. But once again, you're not getting a whole lot of aerial assistance from helicopters or planes or anything like that because of the dense forest. So, um, that's strange. Something I do want to mention that I heard, and I don't want to forget about it before we end the show, that I thought was really wild, is there has been, excuse me, 6 occurrences that there were physicists that had gone missing. And in all 6 occurrences over a span of several decades, they were all German physicists. That was
Hmm.
kind of strange to me, that all the physicists that did get lost or have never been found were German physicists. I thought that was kind of strange. I'm not implying anything. It's just very weird.
I mean, I don't have one available at the moment, but I actually feel like you're setting us up for more of a joke.
I wish I had something, but
Because I mean, the fact that they were German, I feel like there is a joke there to be made, and I don't have it, unfortunately. But that is interesting. I wonder if it was specifically aimed at the Germans, or it's something in the German culture. I don't know. I got nothing.
no idea. But it's not even just in Germany. It was all over the world in different countries and stuff. So
But all
it
Germans.
was wild.
Seems like the
So
world is out to get the Germans.
it's possible. But yeah, I
Why
mean,
is it you?
I,
Sorry.
I'll end with this. I mean, just like I stated, and everybody's kind of alluded to, is that 99% of these are probably just people getting lost in perfect storm of not being found or being found in a fashion that was deemed too late to save somebody or whatever. But with all of the stories and as many accounts as there has been, it feels as though there are other possibilities out there. And we'd be kind of closed minded not to at least accept the fact that there could be something else going on.
Like an X file. Ozzy, you got anything left? Are you good?
Yeah, absolutely. What I've learned is that to respect the unknown, the land, because I mean there are things that we more than likely I have felt things that I can't explain, and it's just like I think that there's stuff that is out there that we don't necessarily know is out there. I think there's people that want to harm people and that they spend their life wanting to commit the perfect crime. I think there's people that have been dehydrated and they get delirious and just walk away and you never see them again. I think that there could be aliens, there could be portals to another world, there could be
Big
pockets
feet.
of different areas.
Big
I
feet.
think, yeah, big feet. I think they could go into like a bear paradise or something. I don't know. But I think there's a lot of
Like
stuff
a
there.
gangster's paradise, but with bears.
Like the bear just takes them to the bear paradise. And there's like unicorns and stuff.
That's awesome. I want to go there.
But I know, wouldn't that be really cool?
I told you
But
guys
I
the pizza big feet story, right? I'm sorry, I can't let this go. I told you that, right? I'll be quick,
Yeah.
I promise.
Yeah.
I
The
gotta,
big feet.
I've got to bring it back up. My aunt back in the '90s had ordered Pizza Hut when they had the Bigfoot square pizza, and she got on the phone and she's like, "I'd like to order two big feet." That was pretty classic.
Well, if you're ordering this
There's
show,
my joke.
Steve's becoming that dad that tells the same stories over and over
I
again.
can't help it. You can't talk big feet and then me not say that. So go ahead.
And well, that's a good point on yours, though, is that these evil people out there, you may put this much thought in the moment of eluding these people, but these people have put years and years and years of thought into kidnapping you.
yeah, and they would probably sit and wait and do it. So, I mean, I think it's a combination of all different kinds of things. So I mean, maybe there's a big eagle that takes kids and just drops them off. I don't know. But I mean, I just think there's all kinds of different scenarios that we don't even know. I mean, we find new species every day. There's caverns. Like I've been all kinds of like out in Arizona and Utah, there's caverns that
Mines, old mining shafts,
yeah, there's all different kinds of things that people
underground
could get
bases,
lost
bunkers.
in that you would probably never find them. Even in West Virginia, like the coal mines. So, I mean, I think it's just a combination of different things. And it's like, respect the woods. Like,
And more importantly, respect yourself. I would like to say that that's the end, but I'll go ahead and read my final thought on that note. I think that a lot of this comes down to the ocean, supernatural phenomenon, or even the dark. A lot of these things are, things that we can't explain in the unknown. So, that's where we go with it. And people go missing in wilderness areas for many reasons. Most are tragic accidents, some are crimes, and a small number remain unresolved. Even after extensive searches and decades of review, Missing 411 doesn't prove the paranormal, but it does highlight something real. There are limits to what we know, limits to search and rescue, and gaps in how disappearances and recorded how disappearances are. With that, we'll see you soon.